Don't tell anyone, my father whispered at the company's 25th anniversary gala. Moments later, my stepmother, Dahlia, dragged me behind the hotel garage for 2 sharp slaps, wiping blood from my lip. I stared directly into the blinking security camera. "Thanks for the timestamp," I said, my voice even. "The merger's morality clause just self-activated. It's 8:41 p.m. My name is Rowan Hale, and I am the head of strategy at Westmere Analytics. Tonight, the company my father built is celebrating 25 years of existence inside the grand ballroom of the Copperfinch Hotel, a gilded cage in the heart of Braxton Vale. The air is thick with the scent of money, ambition, and overpriced lilies. Warm, buttery light from tungsten chandeliers bleeds across the faces of our city's corporate elite, making them all look jaundiced and slightly ill. The constant, delicate chime of crystal flutes touching is the room's heartbeat, a fragile percussion beneath the drone of practice networking. I watch it all from a corner, a ghost at my own family's feast. My father, Victor Hale, the CEO, stands near the podium. He wears his corporate ethics smile, a carefully engineered expression that doesn't quite reach his eyes. It's the same smile he's used in every annual report, every hostile negotiation, every carefully worded apology for a product recall. Beside him, attached to his arm like a priceless and dangerous accessory, is Dahlia, my stepmother, the company's chief operating officer. She is draped in a gown the color of spilled ink and wears a triple-strand pearl necklace that looks like a beautiful polished leash. She surveys the room not as a host, but as a general inspecting her troops, her eyes lingering on anyone who might represent a threat or an opportunity. She is a creature of pure, weaponized charisma, and tonight, she is radiant with it. Earlier, when I arrived, I saw the poster they'd erected in the lobby. It was a 10-foot-tall photograph of my father and Dahlia, their faces airbrushed into monuments of corporate virtue. Below them, in a clean, powerful font, were the words, "Integrity builds empires." The irony was so profound, so utterly shameless, that a raw, genuine laugh escaped my lips before I could stifle it. A few heads turned. I smoothed my dress and manufactured a polite smile. The kind I'd been taught was suitable for public appearances, but the laughter was still there, coiled tight in my chest. Integrity hadn't built this empire. Silence had, secrets had, and I had been its most loyal, quiet architect. The speeches are as empty and effervescent as the champagne. Victor talks about humble beginnings, about grit and vision. He doesn't mention the competitor whose trade secrets he acquired through a mole, or the small tech firm he bankrupted with a frivolous lawsuit to absorb their patent. He talks about family, gesturing to Dahlia and then, briefly, to me. A spotlight finds me for a second, and I nod. The dutiful daughter, the strategic asset. The applause is polite, but the real energy in the room is focused on the impending merger with Helix Quant, a deal that will make us all obscenely wealthy and powerful, a deal I personally structured. When the clapping subsides and the string quartet begins a placid, forgettable tune, Dahlia makes her move. She glides through the crowd, her smile a fixed, brilliant thing. "Rowan, darling," she says, her voice a low purr that doesn't match the steel in her eyes. A word. It isn't a request. Her fingers, cold and surprisingly strong, clamp around my upper arm. She steers me away from the light and the noise, toward a service door concealed behind a velvet curtain. The warm hum of the party fades, replaced by the sterile buzz of fluorescent lights and the distant clang of kitchen equipment. The air grows cold. "What is this, Dahlia?" I ask, my voice flat. I keep it steady, betraying nothing. "A performance review," she says, pulling me down a concrete corridor. We pass laundry carts and pallets of bottled water. Her heels click sharply on the floor, an angry metronome counting down the seconds. She shoves open a heavy steel door, and we are outside, in the service alley behind the hotel garage. The air is damp and smells of rain and diesel fumes. It's a blind spot, mostly, but not entirely. She pushes me back against the rough brick wall, positioning us perfectly. To our left, high on the northwest corner of the structure, a small black dome houses security camera E17. A tiny red light confirms it is active, its unblinking eye aimed directly at us. I had made sure of its line of sight when I reviewed the venue's security schematics as part of the event contract. A small detail, an unimportant contingency. "You think you're clever, don't you?" Dahlia's voice is stripped of its ballroom silk, now raw and guttural. "That stunt you pulled in the board meeting Tuesday, siding with the independent directors on the risk assessment report, you think I didn't see what you were doing?" I say nothing. I just watch her. I watch the fury contort her perfectly made-up face. "You work for your father. You work for me. You are a part of this family, and you will act like it." She seethes. "You ever steer another meeting off course, and you're out of the Hale legacy for good. No title, no trust fund, nothing. Do you understand me?" Her hand comes up fast. The sound of the slap is loud in the enclosed space, a sharp, wet crack that echoes off the concrete. My head snaps to the side, my cheek erupting in a blaze of fire. Before I can recover, she hits me again, a backhand with the same palm. This one splits my lip. I taste the immediate, metallic tang of blood. "Don't tell anyone," she whispers. Her face inches from mine, her breath hot. It's the family motto, the first and last rule of the Hale dynasty. She holds my gaze for another second, then steps back, smoothing her dress. Her composure is instantly, flawlessly restored. She is Dahlia Hale, COO of Westmere Analytics. Once more. She turns and walks back through the steel door, leaving me alone in the cold alley. I don't move. I lift a hand to my mouth, my fingers coming away red. I take a slow, deep breath. Then I look at my smartwatch, a sleek, unassuming device on my wrist. I press a sequence on the bezel. A single, subtle vibration answers against my skin. A haptic confirmation. Audio. Capture. On. It had been running for the last 5 minutes. The microphone is sensitive enough to have captured every word of her threat, every decibel of the impact. I stay perfectly still, counting the seconds in my head. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. At 17 seconds, a uniformed hotel security guard rounds the corner on his patrol. He is a large man with a weary face. He stops when he sees me. "Ma'am, everything all right here?" he asks, his hand instinctively going to the radio on his belt. He's just late enough to have missed the act itself, but just in time to be a witness to the immediate aftermath. His presence will be logged in his report. Another piece of the timeline. "I'm fine," I say, my voice clear, though my lip is already starting to swell. "Just needed some air." He hesitates, his eyes flicking to the blood on my fingers, then back to my face. "You sure? You're bleeding." Tripped on the curb, I lie smoothly. "I'm fine, thank you." He doesn't look convinced, but he also doesn't want the complication of a wealthy guest filing a report. He gives a curt nod. "All right then, have a good night." He continues on his rounds, his footsteps receding down the alley. The moment he is gone, I pull out my phone. My fingers are steady as I open my email client and compose a new message. The recipient is my own secure, encrypted address. The subject line is blank. In the body, I type a single, declarative sentence. 8:41 p.m. Morality clause violation. The time is precise. I hit send. The email is now a permanent, unalterable record, time-stamped by a dozen servers between my phone and the cloud. It is linked to the GPS metadata from my phone's location in this alley, the biometric data from my watch, and the audio file that is already uploading to a secure server. I lean my head back against the cold, damp brick. The pain in my cheek is a sharp, radiating heat, a perfect, stinging outline of Dahlia's hand. It feels like a brand. It is a declaration of war, and she doesn't even know she's fired the first shot. She thinks this was a punishment, an enforcement of the family's code of silence. She is wrong. This isn't an injury, this is evidence. The pain is not a deterrent. It's a catalyst. It's a clean, bright red line drawn in the sand, and it marks the exact point where my plan, years in the making, finally, irrevocably, begins. The Hale family motto isn't "integrity builds empires." The real one, the one whispered over Sunday dinners and implied in every corporate memo, is "image is currency." And in the Hale family, we were all taught to be billionaires in perception, regardless of our actual moral solvency. My father, Victor Hale, loved to tell the story of the garage. He built Westmere Analytics from nothing, just a few rented servers in a dusty two-car garage that smelled of oil and ambition. It was the company's creation myth. But that garage was also my classroom. When I was 12, long before Dahlia, he'd take me there on Saturdays. He wouldn't teach me coding. He'd teach me what he called risk investigation. He'd set up hypothetical scenarios. A competitor is poaching our clients. Rowan, how do you find the leak? A supplier is padding their invoices. Where's the evidence? He taught me to read metadata, to analyze behavior, to see the patterns in the noise. He was training a bloodhound, and he was so proud of his creation. He just never imagined I'd one day be trained to hunt on my own property. Dahlia was not part of the original myth. She was a revision, a glossy addendum stapled onto the family history. She entered our lives 7 years ago, not as a romantic interest, but as a corporate solution. Westmere had been caught in a devastating data privacy scandal. The stock was in freefall. Dahlia was the head of the crisis PR firm Victor hired to cauterize the wound. She was brilliant, ruthless, and utterly captivating. She didn't just stop the bleeding. She spun the narrative so completely that Victor emerged looking like a victim of rogue employees, a champion of newly implemented, ironclad security. The stock rebounded, and 6 months later, she was Mrs. Dahlia Hale. 18 months after that, she was the COO, having seamlessly transitioned from saving the company's image to running its operations. She understood the family's core principle better than Victor. It doesn't matter what you do. It only matters what you can prove you did. Family first, media second. Victor repeated that phrase at the dinner table like a prayer. It was his justification for everything. It meant that family loyalty superseded all other inconvenient truths. It meant that any problem, any failing, any act of cruelty was to be handled internally, silently, before the media, his catch-all term for the outside world, could get a whiff of it. The family was a fortress, and the drawbridge was never, ever to be lowered. I was raised to be the fortress's most loyal guard. My education, my career path, my entire life was cultivated for a single purpose, to be useful to Westmere. I was encouraged to be brilliant, but not too brilliant, to be visible, but never to cast a shadow that might eclipse my father or his new wife. My role was head of strategy, a position that sounded powerful but was, in effect, the role of a high-level architect designing blueprints that others would take credit for building. I was the silent engine, the reliable cog, the daughter who understood the mission, loyalty, silence, utility. Any crack in the family's polished facade was immediately papered over. When a senior executive was fired for embezzlement, the official story was early retirement to focus on philanthropic work. A week later, Victor and Dahlia were photographed cutting a ribbon for a new hospital wing, their faces beaming with manufactured benevolence. When a disastrous product launch cost the company millions, the narrative was spun into a brave strategic pivot. Every failure was buried under a mountain of press releases, charitable donations, and carefully staged photo ops. The Hale family didn't just manage their image, they reverse-engineered it from a fantasy of moral perfection. The rules were unspoken until they needed to be enforced. After a distant cousin threatened a lawsuit over a disputed inheritance, Victor had the Hale family charter drafted. It was a ludicrous document, bound in blue leather, that every family member with a financial stake was expected to sign. Its key clauses were simple. "Thou shalt not sue another hale," and "All internal disputes shall be resolved internally, without recourse to outside parties." It was a gag order disguised as a family covenant. I signed it. But I had a habit that was deeply, fundamentally in breach of that charter. A habit I had cultivated in secret for over a decade. I save evidence. I save all of it. It started when I was 16. I had won a significant merit scholarship to a prestigious summer program. The physical check was mailed to the house. I gave it to Victor's assistant for deposit, as was protocol. A week later, the program contacted me, asking why my tuition payment was late. The check had never arrived. It had, according to the assistant, simply vanished in an internal mail mix-up. "These things happen," Dahlia cooed, patting my hand, her eyes glittering with something that looked like sympathy but felt like victory. "We'll pay for it, darling. Don't worry." But they didn't. They claimed the corporate accounts were locked pending an audit, and the program deadline passed. I knew the assistant was obsessively organized. A mix-up was impossible. So, late that night, I used an admin-level password I'd acquired by observing my father's IT manager to access the security logs for the executive wing. We didn't have cameras in the house, but the corporate office, our home away from home, was a fortress of surveillance. I found the footage from the mailroom. I watched the assistant place my scholarship envelope in Dahlia's internal mailbox. Then I pulled the logs from the hallway near the parking garage. I watched Dahlia leave for the day, that envelope in her hand. Finally, I accessed the logs for the warehouse shredding bay, a place for destroying sensitive prototypes and old contracts. There she was, time-stamped, feeding my envelope, along with a stack of other papers, into the industrial shredder. I downloaded the MP4 files. I saved them on 2 separate, encrypted hard drives, which I stored in an off-site safety deposit box. I never confronted her. I never mentioned the scholarship again. I simply absorbed the loss. But I had learned something invaluable. Proof was power, and proving a lie was more valuable than winning the original prize. That day, I stopped being a daughter and started being an archivist. That incident is why I studied strategy. It's why my focus at Wharton was on contract law and forensic accounting. I didn't care about building empires. I cared about understanding their foundations, so I would know exactly where the load-bearing walls were. I learned to read a 500-page merger agreement like a mind map, spotting the booby traps, the loopholes, and the hidden triggers. I was the one who drafted the addendums, who structured the exit clauses, who wrote the fine print that everyone signed but no one, except me, ever read. So as I stand here in this cold service alley, the blood drying on my lip, Dahlia has no idea what she's done. She thinks she's just reinforced the family rules. She thinks she's put the loyal, silent daughter back in her place. She's wrong. My silence, for the past 15 years, has not been submission. It has not been loyalty. It has been the patient, meticulous, and careful laying of a fuse. And tonight, with 2 swings of her hand captured by camera E17, Dahlia Hale just lit it. The Westmere Helix Quant merger is the largest deal in our sector's history. It's a leviathan, a behemoth of synergies and leveraged assets, and its success hinges on a 200-page agreement that I know better than I know my own father's face. Buried deep within that document, in Section 12, Subsection 4, is a seemingly innocuous provision titled Executive Conduct and Fiduciary Responsibility. It's a morality clause, a standard piece of legal boilerplate insisted upon by Helix Quant's famously cautious board. They wanted a safeguard, a way to ensure they weren't marrying into a family with skeletons poised to fall out of the closet during the critical pre-vote blackout period. The clause is simple in its language and brutal in its application. It states that any C-level executive from either company who is found to have committed a verifiable act of violence, intimidation, or moral turpitude during the 60-day blackout period leading up to the final shareholder vote will have their voting rights on the merger automatically and irrevocably suspended. It was designed to prevent a last-minute scandal, a DUI, an affair, a public meltdown, from jeopardizing the deal. It was corporate armor. No one, least of all my father or Dahlia, ever imagined it could be used as a corporate weapon from within. They didn't read the appendix, Appendix C, which I drafted myself during a marathon 3-day session with the lawyers. They saw the heading, Defining Verifiable Action, and assumed it was legal minutia. They signed off on it without a second glance. In that appendix, I defined the precise, mechanical trigger for the clause. A verifiable act, I wrote, could be established by a combination of two factors. First, direct, unambiguous evidence, with a specific mention of time-stamped audio-visual recording, and second, contemporaneous medical or law enforcement documentation of physical injury or distress. Camera verification plus medical confirmation equals activation. It was a simple, elegant equation of ruin. Back inside the hotel, I bypassed the grand ballroom entirely. The distant sound of the string quartet is a mockery. I walk with calm, measured steps toward the concierge desk, one hand held discreetly to my split lip. The blood has stopped, but the swelling is beginning. I don't look flustered or frightened. I look like a woman with a minor, inconvenient problem that requires a solution. "Excuse me," I say to the woman at the desk. Her name tag reads, Chloe. "Could you direct me to your first aid station? I had a clumsy fall outside." "Of course, Ms. Hale," she says, her face a mask of professional concern. She recognizes me. Good. "It's just down this hall, to the left. Should I call someone for you?" "No, thank you. Chloe, I can manage." The first aid room is a small, sterile white box smelling of antiseptic. A young man with tired eyes and a paramedic's uniform sits on a stool, scrolling through his phone. He looks up, startled. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "Yes," I say, stepping into the bright, unforgiving light. "I need you to document an injury." I remove my hand from my mouth. The cut is small but clean, a precise tear in the soft tissue of my lower lip. The surrounding area is already beginning to bruise, a faint purple shadow. I fell. He is all business, his demeanor shifting into professional mode. "Okay, let's have a look." He gently probes the area with a gloved finger. "It's not deep, won't need stitches, but it's definitely going to swell." He cleans the cut with a saline wipe that stings with a cold fire. "Laceration and associated edema," he murmurs, typing notes into a tablet. "That's the language I need. Clinical, undeniable." "I need you to take a photo for my insurance," I say. It's a plausible, mundane request. "And I'll need a copy of your incident report." "No problem." He pulls out a small digital camera and takes several pictures, the flash momentarily blinding me. "I'll print a copy of the report for you right now. Standard procedure." He logs the time, 8:54 p.m., another brick in the wall of evidence. He hands me the printout, a single sheet of paper detailing the blunt force trauma consistent with a fall. I fold it carefully and place it in my clutch. My next stop is the hotel's security office in the basement. The chief of security, a former police detective named Morris, is a man I dealt with extensively while negotiating the event's security protocol. I had insisted on a dedicated liaison, citing the high-profile nature of the guests. "Ms. Hale," he says, surprised to see me. "Is everything okay?" "Mostly. Arthur," I say, keeping my tone level. "We have a minor situation. I need to invoke Section 7B of the venue rental agreement, the clause regarding an emergency evidence request." He frowns, trying to recall the clause. I can see the gears turning. I had buried it in the middle of a dense section about liability and insurance. "That's the immediate access clause?" "The same," I confirm. "I need the footage from camera E17, the one covering the Northwest Service Alley, from 8:39 p.m. to 8:45 p.m. tonight." "Can I ask what this is about?" "A personal item was stolen from me in that alley. I believe the incident was captured on that camera." I lie, meeting his gaze. "The item is of extreme personal and financial value. Time is of the essence." The lie is a necessary shield. The truth is not his business. The contract is. He nods, his professionalism overriding his curiosity. The contract is king. He leads me to a bank of monitors and types commands into a keyboard. A moment later, the feed from E17 appears. It's high angle, black and white, but perfectly clear. He isolates the correct time window. We watch in silence as Dahlia drags me into the frame. We watch the argument, her gestures sharp and angry. We watch the two slaps, my head snapping back with each impact. We watch her lean in for the final threat, then turn and walk away. We watch me stand alone for 17 seconds before the patrol guard appears. "Jesus," Morris breathes, looking from the screen to me. "That's not a theft, Ms. Hale. That's assault." "I will handle that aspect. Arthur," I say, my voice like ice. "For now, I just need a copy of that segment, as per our agreement, on a secure, encrypted drive." He doesn't argue. He downloads the file, a small MP4, and transfers it to a new flash drive from his desk. He places it in my hand. "Anything else you need? You call me directly." "Thank you, Arthur. Your discretion is appreciated." Back in the quiet of my hotel room upstairs, away from the party that still murmurs 2 floors below, I assemble the pieces. I open my laptop and create a new folder on a sandboxed partition. I name it Garage Truth. Into this folder, I place the files, one by one. First, the audio file from my watch, a crisp, clear recording of Dahlia's threat. Second, a digital copy of the paramedics' report, complete with the photos of my split lip. Third, the MP4 file from camera E17. Fourth, a screenshot of the time-stamped email I sent to myself. Its metadata a digital fingerprint placing me at that exact location at that exact time. Each piece is a link in a chain, forged in foresight and cooled in anger. The merger vote is scheduled in 3 weeks. The Hale family, Victor, Dahlia, and myself, collectively control a 38% voting block. The Helix Quant board controls 40%. The remaining 22% is held by a diverse group of institutional investors and independent shareholders. The vote requires a 2/3 majority to pass on the current terms. Without Dahlia's shares, the Hale family block drops significantly. The power shifts. The math changes. The vote would become 3-2 against, giving the deciding power to the independent directors on our board. Directors I have spent the last 6 months quietly cultivating, feeding them data on Dahlia's operational recklessness and Victor's willful blindness. I have shown them, through anonymous data drops and carefully worded strategic reports, that the company they believe they are merging with is not the company that actually exists. But even that is not the final move. No one knows that I have already used my own considerable private fortune to retain a proxy advisory firm. No one knows that I have prepared a full slate of alternative, truly independent board candidates, ready to be presented to the shareholders should the current deal falter. It is a contingency plan wrapped in a contingency plan, a corporate coup hidden behind a personal grievance. Dahlia thinks 8:41 p.m. was the moment she reasserted her dominance. She believes it was the time she put me back in my box. She has no idea that 8:41 p.m. was not an ending. It was a beginning. It wasn't just a time on a clock. It was the precise, calculated pressure point I had been waiting for her to press. It was the lever. And with the evidence now sitting in a folder on my laptop, I have finally, after all these years, begun to pull it, the morning after the gala. The world is muted. A gray, methodical dawn breaks over Braxton Vale. I sit at the minimalist desk in my apartment, a cup of black coffee cooling beside my laptop. The swelling on my lip is a dull, persistent throb, a physical reminder of the task at hand. There is no anger in my movements, only a cold, dispassionate purpose. I am not a victim seeking justice. I am an executive executing a hostile takeover of my own life. My first action is internal. I navigate to Westmere Analytics intranet, to the Ethics and Compliance portal. It's a page I designed, a sterile interface of drop-down menus and upload buttons, promising absolute anonymity through a third-party server based in Switzerland. I compose a new submission, The form asks for the nature of the complaint. I select workplace violence and code of conduct violation. In the description box, I do not write a narrative. I do not use emotional language. I list facts as bullet points. Incident date, yesterday's date. Incident time, approx. 8:41 p.m. EST. Location, Copperfinch Hotel, Northwest Service Alley. Parties involved, reporting employee, anonymous, Executive Dahlia Hale, COO. Nature of incident, unprovoked physical assault and verbal intimidation. Below the text field is an Attach Evidence button. I click it. A file browser opens. I navigate to the Garage Truth folder and select the file e17.mp4. I watch the progress bar fill. Upload complete. I click Submit. The system generates a case number. I write it down. The first charge has been placed. My second action is external, and far more significant. I open a new, secure browser window and navigate to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's Office of the Whistleblower. This is a different kind of portal, a gateway to a world where corporate secrets become federal cases. I begin filling out the TCR form, tip, complaint, or referral. My complaint is not about the assault. The assault is merely the evidence, the predicate act. The crime I am reporting is far more subtle and, to the SEC, far more important. I allege that Westmere Analytics is guilty of a failure to disclose material risk to its shareholders in advance of the Helix Quant merger vote. The material risk, I argue, is the COO's volatile and violent behavior, which constitutes a significant liability and calls into question her fitness to lead the combined entity. An executive who resorts to physical violence is a ticking bomb of unpredictable behavior, and the failure of the CEO and the board to disclose and address this represents a material omission in their fiduciary duty to investors. I am using the language of corporate law to describe a personal wound. I invoke my rights under the Dodd-Frank Act, specifically the Retaliation Safe Harbor provisions. My identity is to remain confidential, protected from my employer until the conclusion of any formal investigation. I attach the same E17.mp4 file, along with a sanitized copy of the paramedics' report, names redacted, but the description of blunt force trauma and the time-stamped photos left intact. I submit the form. A second case number is generated. The second charge is placed. The internal reaction is swift and predictable. By 10:00 a.m., the head of human resources, a nervous man named Arthur Vance, has requested an urgent all-hands meeting with the company's general counsel. The Ethics Committee, an independent body on paper, is legally obligated to investigate any claim of workplace violence. They cannot bury this. They are now on the clock. Their every action subject to legal scrutiny. HR is forced to open what amounts to a Title IX-style review, a formal process with interviews, evidence gathering, and a mandated timeline. Dahlia may be the COO, but on this procedural battlefield, she is now simply the accused. The first unexpected tremor occurs at 2:15 p.m. I receive an automated calendar notification. The final shareholder vote for the Helix Quant merger, scheduled for 3 weeks from now, has been indefinitely postponed. Moments later, a company-wide email from my father's office provides the official explanation. To allow both parties sufficient time to conduct final due diligence, it's a lie. I access the internal email server and find the source of the postponement. A sharply worded letter from Helix Quant's external legal counsel at Sullivan & Cromwell. They cite disturbing anonymous reports of a high-level internal investigation at Westmere and formally request a stay on the vote, pending a full and transparent resolution. My anonymous tip to our own ethics board has already breached the fortress walls. The prospective buyers are spooked. Dahlia's reaction is even more predictable than the company's. She tries to erase history. I have a silent alert set up on the hotel's security server, a tripwire I put in place years ago. At 3:30 p.m., I get a notification. A high-level administrative command has been issued to the server housing the logs for camera E17. The command, delete logs, archive, E17. Access denied. A second command. Format. U, security. Access denied. She is trying to digitally scorch the earth. It's clumsy, brutish, and utterly futile. The night before, from my hotel room, I had activated a mirroring protocol. Every byte of data from that server, from the moment of the gala until now, was being duplicated in real time to a private, encrypted cloud server I own. Her attempt to destroy the evidence is now, in itself, a new piece of evidence, a logged, time-stamped, and irrefutable act of spoliation. Now, with the formal investigations creating a smokescreen, I add more fuel to the fire. I have a contact on the internal audit team, a junior analyst I mentored, a quiet but fiercely ambitious woman who owes me a favor. I send her a single, anonymous email from a Proton Mail account. The subject? PR budget discrepancies. The body. Cross-reference the expense ledgers for Dahlia Hale Special Projects LLC against the approved vendor list. Check payment dates against market news cycles. Inside that special projects fund is Dahlia's personal slush fund, a labyrinth of opaque transactions and vaguely defined consulting fees. And in those records, the auditors will find a series of large, undocumented payments to a network of digital marketing firms. These firms specialize in astroturfing and social media manipulation. The auditors will find that these payments correspond perfectly with a series of damaging and entirely false rumors that appeared on financial blogs and social media about one of our mid-sized competitors 6 months ago, a competitor that subsequently suffered a stock dip and was forced to abandon a product launch that would have directly competed with one of Dahlia's pet projects. With that one email, the entire calculus of the situation changes. This is no longer about a slap in an alley. This is no longer about a breach of the company's ethics policy. The risk I have exposed has now metastasized. It has evolved from a matter of personal conduct into a potential case of securities fraud and market manipulation. The conversation is no longer about whether Dahlia is a fit executive. It's about whether she is a criminal. The fortress of the Hale family, built on the bedrock of silence and image, is beginning to shake. The lines of power, once so rigid and clear, are now blurred. My father is trapped between protecting his wife and protecting his company. The board is trapped between loyalty to their CEO and their legal duty to investigate, and Helix Quant is watching, their lawyers sharpening their knives, ready to either renegotiate the deal from a position of power or walk away entirely. The table is no longer balanced. It is beginning to tilt, and every piece is starting to slide in my direction. The conference room on the 34th floor is a glass box in the sky, designed to project power and transparency. Today, it only feels like an interrogation room. The lighting is cold, surgical. It reflects off the polished black granite of the 20-foot table, making the surface look like a frozen lake. The air is still, recycled, and heavy with unspoken accusations. We are all here. My father, Victor, sits at the head of the table, not in his usual seat of power, but as a man presiding over a tribunal he cannot control. Dahlia is beside him, her posture rigid, her face a mask of composed indignation. She looks magnificent, a marble statue of a wronged executive. Across from them sits the company's general counsel, Mark Kaplan, his face pale, his eyes darting between his notes and the two people at the end of the table. Those two are Ann Shaw and David Morrison, the independent directors. They are the reason we are here. They represent the shareholders who are not part of the Hale family. They are not impressed by dynasty. They are moved by liability, and I am sitting at the far end, alone. My laptop closed, a single, unmarked USB drive in my hand. This is an absurd waste of time, Dahlia begins, her voice resonating with manufactured confidence. She is opening. We are 3 weeks from the most important merger in this company's history, and we are convened because of a malicious, anonymous complaint that is, frankly, slanderous. Morrison, a man with a face like carved granite, does not look at her. He looks at Kaplan. The complaint alleges workplace violence and a severe breach of the Executive Code of Conduct, originating from the COO. That is not a waste of time. That is a material risk. It's a lie, Dahlia snaps, her composure cracking for a fraction of a second. A fabrication by a disgruntled employee. Victor raises a hand, his CEO peacemaker expression firmly in place. Now, let's not be hasty. This is a delicate situation. What we have here is a misunderstanding, a disagreement within the family. I can assure you, it has been handled internally. His words hang in the air, a fatal admission. He has just confirmed the parties. A family disagreement? Shaw, a woman who climbed her way up from the SEC's enforcement division, repeats the words with surgical disdain. Mr. Hale, the complaint I reviewed alleges a physical assault by a C-level executive on a subordinate. Your attempt to frame that as a family disagreement is, in itself, a violation of governance protocols. It didn't happen, Dahlia says, her voice flat. Prove it. Very well, I say. The word drops into the silence like a stone. I stand up. I walk the length of the table, the sound of my heels a sharp, deliberate click on the marble floor. I ignore my father's warning gaze and Dahlia's pure, condensed hatred. I reach the 90-inch smart screen at the front of the room and plug the USB drive into the port. The click of the device seating itself is the only sound in the room. A file window appears. I select E17 MP4. The image is high angle, black and white, and sterile. The sound is low quality but horribly clear. The high-pitched, lonely whine of the garage wind. We see Dahlia's back, my face. We hear her voice, tinny and sharp. You ever steer another meeting off course, and you're out of the Hale legacy for good. And then, the motion, the hand swinging, the sharp, wet crack of the first slap. My head snaps. The crack of the second. Turn that off, Victor roars. It's a pure, primal reflex of a man seeing the ugliest truth of his life played out on a corporate monitor. He lunges for the remote on the console, his hand jabbing the off button. The screen goes black. Silence. The image is burned into our retinas. A family disagreement. Victor? Shaw's voice is dangerously quiet. Dahlia is staring at the blank screen, her face ashen. She has realized, too late, what this is. It doesn't matter if you turn it off, I say, my voice calm, almost conversational. I return to my seat. I sent a secure, live stream link of that file to Helix Quant's independent counsel 30 minutes before this meeting. They are, at this moment, observing this meeting. They have seen the video, and they have just seen you try to suppress it. Kaplan, the lawyer, makes a small, strangled sound. He is no longer a corporate counsel. He is a witness to spoliation of evidence. This is... Dahlia's voice is a raw whisper. She's searching for a narrative. This is a setup. She provoked me. This is a deep fake. It's... I slide a folder across the polished lake of the table. It stops directly in front of Ann Shaw. There is no provocation defense for assault, Dahlia, and that is not a deepfake. Shaw opens the folder. What is this, Ms. Hale? The chain of custody, I say. Exhibit A, the signed, time-stamped medical report from the Copper Finch Hotel's on-site paramedic, noting laceration and edema to the lower lip consistent with blunt force trauma. The time is 8:54 p.m., 13 minutes after the assault. Exhibit B, the metadata from the E17.MP4 file, verifying its creation time and certifying it has not been altered. Exhibit C, a copy of the venue rental contract for the gala, in which I, as head of strategy, co-signed and included a clause granting my office emergency access to all security logs. It's all there, a verifiable act, and contemporaneous medical documentation. I use the exact language from the contract. I see Kaplan's eyes widen. He recognizes the words. Dahlia finds her footing. The shock is replaced by a hot, dark rage. You sabotaging little bitch, she hisses. All pretense of the COO gone. You did this. You planted that clause. You waited for this. You are trying to destroy this company to get back at me, to get back at your father. I am not destroying the company, I say, my voice cutting through her tirade. I am protecting it. From you. I slide a second document across the table. It's a single page, a signatory sheet from the merger agreement. It stops in front of Dahlia. You're very concerned about the merger, I say, which is why I'm sure you remember signing this, specifically, Section 12, Subsection 4, the Executive Conduct Clause, the one you signed, Dahlia, the one I drafted. Her eyes scan the page, but she's not reading. She's trapped. Shaw and Morrison turn, in perfect unison, to the General Counsel. Mr. Kaplan, Morrison says, his voice flat. You are our counsel. Has the clause been activated? Kaplan looks at me. He looks at Victor. He looks at the documents. He is a man trapped by his own profession. He clears his throat. Given the evidence presented, a verifiable audio-visual recording and a contemporaneous medical report, as defined in Appendix C, yes, the terms of the clause have been met. The provision is, it's activated. The room is silent. Victor has his head in his hands. Dahlia is breathing hard, her eyes locked on me, promising 1,000 different kinds of murder. I am the only one who speaks. Then I make a formal motion, I say, my voice projecting to every corner of the room, to the microphones on the table, to the silent observers on the other end of the live stream. Pursuant to the terms of Section 12.4, I move for an immediate vote to suspend the voting rights of COO Dahlia Hale on all matters pertaining to the Helix Quant merger, effective immediately. Kaplan sputters, We can't just— Yes, we can, Shaw interrupts. The clause is self-executing. The vote is a formality of the board. I second the motion. All in favor, Morrison says, raising his hand. Shaw raises her hand. Aye. Morrison raises his. Aye. Victor looks up, his face broken. Nay. I look at my father. Then I raise my hand. Aye. The motion passes, 3-2. Morrison announces, Ms. Hale's voting rights on the merger are hereby suspended, pending a full investigation by an external committee. It is done. Dahlia has been surgically excised from the most important vote in the company's history. The 38% Hale voting bloc is shattered. She stands up so violently her chair screeches and topples over. She says nothing. She just walks out of the room, a hurricane of silent fury. Victor follows her, not looking at me. You've destroyed this family, Rowan, he whispers as he passes. No, I say to his retreating back. I've just enforced its contracts. They leave. Kaplan quickly gathers his papers, muttering about next steps and mitigation, and flees. I am left alone in the cold. Glass box with Shaw and Morrison. Shaw closes the evidence folder. That was surgically done. Ms. Hale, you had this entire sequence planned. I plan for all contingencies, I say. It's the only answer I will give. She nods, a small, sharp gesture of respect. What happens now? I stand and walk to the floor-to-ceiling glass wall, 34 floors below. The lights of Braxton Vale are coming on in the late afternoon dusk. The cars move in their prescribed lanes, red and white, a flow of data. It isn't a city, it's a schematic, a complex system of inputs and outputs, and I have always been very, very good at reading the map. Now, I say, looking down at the matrix I've calculated for so long, we renegotiate. My father and Dahlia made a classic, fatal mistake. They confused silence with obedience. They saw the silent daughter at the dinner table, the quiet head of strategy in the boardroom, and assumed I was a passive entity, a loyal piece of furniture. They never considered that a person who listens more than they speak isn't empty. They're gathering data. While they were busy managing their image, I was busy building a network, not with handshakes and backslapping, but with encrypted emails, anonymous data drops, and quiet, off-site coffees with people who, like me, had grown tired of the Hale dynasty's brand of toxic monarchy. My primary target, cultivated over a year, was not a single person, but a block of votes, the small to mid-sized institutional investors, the ones who are too small to have a voice on their own, but become a battering ram when united. My masterpiece was Pillar North, a local pension fund that held a respectable 2.5% of Westmere stock. 3 months ago, I'd requested an informal meeting with their fund manager, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Elena Ramirez. I presented it as a routine strategic update. I didn't go in with accusations. I went in with data. I showed her a risk analysis I'd built, modeling the potential impact of key person dependency and opaque executive discretionary spending, my corporate euphemisms for Victor's ego and Dahlia's slush fund. I showed her the executive turnover rate in departments Dahlia directly managed, 35% higher than the company average. I didn't have to draw a conclusion. She read the charts, and her eyes narrowed. "What you're telling me, Ms. Hale," she'd said, "is that the company's biggest liability is its own COO." I just nodded. "I'm telling you," I replied, "that our current governance structure presents an unmitigated risk to your members' pensions." I had her. She was a fiduciary, and I had just handed her a documented, actionable threat to her client's money. I had given her a reason to listen when the time came. But listening wasn't enough. If the Helix Quant deal collapsed, as I intended, there would be a power vacuum. The board would be in chaos. A good strategist doesn't just create a void. They have a plan to fill it. I had a full proxy slate prepared, a clean board, ready to be nominated at an emergency shareholder meeting. This wasn't an activist slate. It was a rescue slate. My 3 candidates were chosen with the precision of a surgeon. First, Dr. Eris Thorne, a widely respected occupational safety and health physician. He would be the face of fixing the culture, a direct public antidote to the workplace violence complaint that was about to become public. Second, Sarah Jenkins, a forensic audit specialist with a terrifying reputation for finding money that didn't want to be found. She would be the one to dismantle Dahlia's PR slush fund and restore faith in the financials. And third, Marcus Cole, a former federal prosecutor from the Southern District of New York. He wasn't just there for his legal mind. He was there to send a very clear, very cold message to the SEC and to my father. The games were over. These pieces were external, to win. I also needed an ally on the inside, someone with access to the raw data, the digital lifeblood of Westmere. I found him in the data warehouse, 3 floors below the executive suites. His name was Jax, a quiet, pale kid in a hoodie who was universally overlooked but was, as I discovered, a certified genius in data architecture. He was an assistant, a glorified file clerk, which made him invisible, perfect. I approached him not as the CEO's daughter, but as the head of strategy, a fellow data nerd. "Jax," I'd said, cornering him in the server room, the hum of the racks covering our conversation. "I'm running a compliance check on our external PR vendors. I need someone who can cross-reference payment ledgers against vendor incorporation dates and social media activity. It's complex." I expected him to be nervous, to ask for a formal request through his manager. Instead, a slow, cold smile spread across his face. "You mean you want to see if Dahlia Hale is paying shell companies to spread disinformation?" My blood ran cold. I'm running a compliance check," I repeated. "I know what you're doing," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He turned back to his terminal, and his fingers flew across the keyboard. "I've been waiting for someone to finally look," he typed in a query. "This is the special projects ledger you want, the one she keeps off the main books." "How did you—" "I build the databases, Ms. Hale. I know where all the hidden doors are." He hit enter. A list of transactions filled the screen. "Give me an hour." He had the full report for me in 45 minutes. A detailed map of Dahlia's entire Black Ops PR campaign, complete with payment transfers, IP addresses of the influencers, and the shell companies they were registered to. It was more than I could have ever hoped for. It was devastating. "Why?" I asked him, our faces illuminated by the glow of the monitor. "This is your career you're handing me." He looked at me, and the sarcasm was gone from his face. It was just a deep, ancestral cold. 15 years ago, my mother was a senior sales manager at this company. She was one of Victor Hale's first hires. Then she filed a formal harassment complaint against a visiting board member. Victor told her, "Don't tell anyone. We handle these things as a family." He transferred her to the billings office. 6 weeks later, she was laid off for performance issues. She never worked in tech again. My breath caught. "Don't tell anyone." It was his favorite phrase, the family's suffocating mantra. "She's my mother," Jack said, his voice flat. "Dahlia's PR fund is an insult. What you're doing is a solution. So, what else do you need?" He was my perfect, unexpected ally. His motive wasn't money or power. It was a cold, patient revenge that mirrored my own. We became a two-person intel unit, operating in the digital shadows of the company. "My father," I said, a new, colder idea forming. "He uses that phrase all the time. Don't tell anyone. Can you search the executive email archive for exactly that?" "It's his favorite filter," Jack said, a flicker of dark amusement in his eyes. He set up a search algorithm. The next morning, we had it, an email from Victor to Dahlia, sent just last week. The subject, Helix Quant Risk. The body, Dahlia. "The independent directors are getting nervous about the audit trail on your PR spend. We need to get this merger vote done before they dig too deep. I've buried the Q3 report, but it won't hold them for long. Don't tell anyone. This stays between us." It was the smoking gun, proof that my father was not just aware of Dahlia's activities, but was actively conspiring with her to hide them from the board and from our merger partners. It was a direct, willful breach of his fiduciary duty. Our alliance became a silent whirlwind of data acquisition. While I was in the strategy room for a meeting on the merger integration, I used my phone to photograph Dahlia's whiteboard. She had arrogantly diagrammed her entire information control plan, which journalists to feed, which analysts to charm, which internal employees to monitor. I sent the photo to Jax. He cross-referenced the journalists' names with the payment ledgers. We found 3 who had received consulting fees from one of her shell companies. Then Jax found something else. 3 posts appeared on a niche financial forum this morning. He messaged me, all anonymous, all detailing rumors of executive malfeasance and cooked books at Westmere. "They're too specific. They're not from us." "It's a counterattack," I replied. "Dahlia's planting them herself to frame me, to make it look like I'm the source of the leaks." "Exactly," he wrote. "But look at this." He sent me a screen recording. The 3 posts appeared at 9:01, 9:02, and 9:04 a.m. At 9:06 a.m., all 3 were deleted by a forum moderator. I checked the moderator's IP. It routes back to one of Dahlia's PR firms. She's planting the rumor and then disappearing it, creating a digital ghost she can blame on someone else. "Did you get them?" I asked. I backed up the entire thread, got the posts, the HTML, the moderator's user ID, everything. She's not just creating a lie, she's creating a trail of evidence of the lie. The network was growing. The day after the disastrous board meeting, I received a call from a regional director in Chicago, a solid, no-nonsense manager who was fed up with Dahlia's impossible demands and Victor's absentee leadership. "I heard what happened," he said, his voice low. "I don't know what you're planning, Rowan, but I've got the sales division. They're tired of the silence. We'll back a change in leadership." I stood in my apartment, looking at the org chart I had mapped on my wall. It wasn't a corporate structure anymore. It was a web. Pillar North held the institutional votes. My proxy slate was waiting in the wings. Jax held the digital keys to the kingdom. And now, the sales division, the company's revenue engine, was ready to mutiny. Dahlia and my father thought they were fighting one silent daughter. They had no idea they were fighting an army I had built in the one place they never thought to look. The shadows they themselves had created. The network was now thick enough, strong enough, and angry enough to withstand any counterattack they could possibly launch. The mask was off. The company was bleeding. In the 72 hours since the 34th floor meeting, the Helix Quant deal was officially listed as terminated. Westmere stock had shed 28% of its value, and the financial blogs were rabid with speculation. Turmoil in Hale Executive Suite, one headline screamed. Westmere COO on the ropes? Another asked. The narrative was chaotic, uncontrolled. It was a storm of rumor and fear. My father and Dahlia were in lockdown, surrounded by lawyers and a new, high-priced crisis PR team. They were trying to build a fortress against the storm. They didn't realize I was the storm. On Thursday morning, the board's independent directors, Shaw and Morrison, scheduled an emergency, company-wide town hall. The stated purpose? To address recent rumors and provide clarity on the company's future. It was the perfect stage. The main auditorium was packed. Thousands more were watching on the global video feed. The air was thick with the kind of anxiety that precedes a massive layoff. When I was announced, not as Rowan Hale, but as head of strategy, Rowan Hale. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. I was not the CEO. I was not the COO. I was the silent daughter. I walked to the center of the stage, my face projected onto the massive screen behind me. I looked calm. I looked in control. I looked like a strategist. I clicked the remote. Good morning, I said, my voice even and clear, amplified throughout the silent room. We are here today because of a breakdown in corporate governance. I am here to present the facts of that breakdown and the solution to fix it. I am not here to assign blame. I am here to analyze a systemic failure. I clicked again. Slide 1. It was minimalist white text on a black background. Timeline of a governance breach. 8:39 p.m. A C-level executive confronts a subordinate employee in an unsecured service area of the Copper Finch Hotel. 8:41 p.m. The executive commits a verifiable act of workplace violence against the subordinate. 8:41 p.m. The executive issues a verbal threat of termination linked to board-related activities. 8:43 p.m. The incident concludes. 8:54 p.m. The subordinate seeks and receives formal medical documentation for physical injuries. The room was utterly silent. I had not used a name. I had not used a pronoun. I had used executive and subordinate. I had described myself as a legal entity. I had told the entire story without tattling. These are the facts of the incident, I said, my voice a flat, clinical instrument. Now, here are the consequences. I clicked again. Slide 2. Our contractual obligation. Ethics Clause 12.4. Any C-level executive found to have committed a verifiable act of violence or intimidation, established by audio-visual recording plus contemporaneous medical documentation, will have their voting rights on the merger automatically and irrevocably suspended. This is not a policy, I continued. This is a legal, binding contract, the one we all operate under, the one that protects our deal with Helix Quant, the one that protects our shareholders. Upon review of the evidence, including the video file E17.mp4 and the medical report, the board has determined that this clause was unequivocally triggered. The COO's voting rights were suspended as a direct, non-negotiable result of this breach. The subsequent termination of the Helix Quant deal was a direct result of this failure in governance. I let that hang in the air. I had just told 5,000 people that Dahlia had not only assaulted an employee, but had single-handedly torpedoed the biggest deal in our history. And I had done it without raising my voice, using the cold, hard logic of the contracts she herself had signed. This incident, I said, pivoting before they could fully absorb the shock, was not a personal failure. It was a systemic one. It happened because our system allowed it to happen. It happened in a blind spot. It happened because of a culture that prioritized silence over safety. That culture ends today. I clicked again. A new slide. The path forward. A new architecture of accountability. Effective immediately. I am proposing a three-pronged initiative to the board, which they have agreed to review. First, the Blind Spot Initiative, a full-scale audit and upgrade of all security monitoring. There will no longer be unmonitored service alleys or stairwells in any Westmere facility. Accountability requires visibility. Second, the Beacon Hotline. Our internal HR-run hotline is a failure. It reports to the very people it's supposed to investigate. We will be retaining an external, independent law firm to manage all future ethics and harassment complaints. All reports will go to them, and their findings will be delivered simultaneously to the complainant and the independent board directors. Third, active intervention training. This will be mandatory. Quarterly training for every employee, from the interns to the CEO. It will teach us how to document, report, and safely intervene in cases of executive misconduct. I paused, looking out over the crowd. They were stunned. They had come expecting to hear about their 401ks. I was giving them a revolution. This is the solution, I concluded. We cannot rebuild our company's value until we rebuild its culture. We cannot ask for the market's trust until we can trust one another. We will be a company built on truth, not image. Thank you. I finished. For a second, there was absolute silence. Then, a single person in the back of the auditorium began to clap. Then another. Within 5 seconds, the entire room was filled with thunderous applause. I watched the live feed chat window explode. Finally, this is what we needed. Rules. Thank you. They were not clapping for me. I understood that perfectly. They were clapping for the simple, beautiful, novel idea that the rules finally applied to everyone. They were clapping because, for the first time, someone had offered them a system instead of a secret. The media narrative flipped within an hour. I didn't have to leak a thing. The town hall was recorded. The financial press got the transcript. The story was no longer Family Feud at Westmere. The new headline, from the Braxton Vale Financial Journal, was Westmere's new strategy, Rowan Hale pivots from crisis to culture, announces architecture of accountability. I was no longer the victim. I was the architect. The stock stopped falling. It didn't recover, but it stabilized. The market, which hates uncertainty above all else, had just been given a clear, actionable plan. It was waiting to see if I could execute. Dahlia's high-priced crisis team saw the writing on the wall. They saw the video, which the board had now logged as evidence. They saw the public narrative shift. They knew they couldn't fight. An assault was indefensible. A billion-dollar deal torpedoed by an assault was unforgivable. Their only play was to take her off the board. At 4:00 p.m., an internal memo was released. Dahlia Hale will be taking an immediate and indefinite medical leave of absence to focus on a severe, stress-related health condition. We wish her a speedy recovery. She was gone. It was a bloodless execution, a corporate surrender signed by her own PR team. Now, only one piece remained. Victor. He called my private cell that evening. His voice was not the voice of a CEO. It was the voice of a broken, old man. Rowan, what have you done? This is our family, our name. You've put it on a platter. We can fix this. A mediation. Just you, me, and Dahlia. We can find a way back. Just stop this. Stop it all. Don't tell anyone, I whispered. What? He asked, confused. Don't tell anyone. That's the family way, isn't it? Victor? Handle it internally. I was silent for a beat. My voice returned, cold and all business. The time for mediation is over. You are no longer speaking to your daughter. You are speaking to the architect of the new board. Rowan, please. Check your email, I said, and hung up. I had sent him a single PDF document. It was a comparison chart, a 2-column spreadsheet. Column A was titled, Mediation, Status Quo. Dahlia returns from medical leave. SEC investigation, already opened, deepens into your conspiracy to defraud shareholders. Shareholder derivative lawsuits are filed, naming you and Dahlia personally. I file a civil suit for assault. Pillar North and other funds launch a hostile proxy war. Stock value, 0. Hale legacy, destroyed. Column B was titled, Orderly Transition. You announce your immediate retirement as CEO, retaining the honorary title of Founder Emeritus. You vote your remaining shares in favor of the independent proxy slate. The board, led by Shaw, promotes me to interim CEO to oversee the cultural transition. The company fully cooperates with the SEC, framing Dahlia as the lone rogue actor. The company survives. The stock stabilizes. Hale legacy, preserved, under new management. I gave him 10 minutes. My phone rang again. It was Victor. You'd do that? He whispered. You'd vote in that slate? I'm not the one driving the vote anymore, I said. Pillar North just publicly announced their full support for the independent slate. Elena Ramirez is on cable news right now. The numbers are already locked. I'm just offering you the chance to be on the winning side of your own execution. He was silent. I could hear him breathing. The calculating, strategic mind of Victor Hale was running the numbers. He was finally seeing me, not as his child, but as an opponent who had just declared checkmate. I stayed in my office, watching the city lights come on. The media was running clips of Ann Shaw and Elena Ramirez, praising the bold new direction of the company. My name was mentioned only as the strategist who had presented the plan. I was nowhere near the cameras. I was out of the frame, just as I'd intended. The facts were doing the talking. The system I had designed was doing the work. The day of the special general meeting is unnaturally quiet. The sky over Braxton Vale is a sheet of brushed steel. We are back in the glass conference room on the 34th floor, but the atmosphere has changed. The tension from the last meeting has cooled into a kind of brittle, procedural formality. The long granite table is set for the shareholders' representatives. The gray leather chairs are perfectly aligned. In the center of the table, a single, stark arrangement of white Phalaenopsis orchids looks like an alien life form, too perfect to be real. The only sound is the faint, rhythmic whoosh of the climate control, a sound like a slow, artificial heartbeat. This is not a room for debate. It is a room for a formal, public execution. Victor is here, seated not at the head of the table, but on the side, a founder reduced to a spectator. He looks smaller, diminished. The C-suite charisma stripped away to reveal the anxious man beneath. My proxy slate, Dr. Thorne, Sarah Jenkins, and Marcus Cole sit together, a solid, implacable block of competence. Ann Shaw and David Morrison are at the head of the table now, the de facto regents of this new era. I am seated with them, not as a daughter, but as the architect of the transition. Then, just as the meeting is about to be called to order, the glass doors slide open. Dahlia walks in. A collective intake of breath ripples through the room. She is supposed to be on medical leave. She has no official capacity here, but she is still a significant shareholder, and she is exercising her right to attend. She isn't dressed in her usual power attire. She is wearing a simple, elegant black dress, her hair pulled back. She looks like a widow at a funeral. Her own, she carries a single, slim leather portfolio. Her eyes find me, and they are not filled with rage. They are voids, black holes of pure, condensed will. She walks directly to me, ignoring the stunned silence of the board, the cameras in the room, broadcasting this meeting to all shareholders, follow her every move. She stops before me, a ghost at the feast, and places the portfolio on the table. Before this farce begins, she says, her voice a low, controlled whisper that the table microphones pick up with perfect clarity. I want to offer you an exit ramp, Rowan, for the good of the family, for the good of this company's name. She opens the portfolio. Inside is a single document, a few pages clipped together. She slides it in front of me. At the top, in bold, are the words, Mutual Non-Disclosure and Confidential Settlement Agreement. It's a hush-money contract, a gag order. I don't touch it. I look at her. What is this, Dahlia? It's a chance to walk away with everything you could ever want, she says, her voice a seductive purr. A significant transfer of my personal shares to you. A guaranteed seat on 2 subsidiary boards. All you have to do is sign, retract your statements to the board, and state that the video was a misunderstanding between family members. We put this all behind us. The Hale name is restored. It's an audacious, insane, last-ditch move. She is trying to bribe me, to intimidate me, in the middle of a live-streamed shareholder meeting, surrounded by lawyers and the very people who voted to suspend her. It is an act of pure, desperate narcissism. She still believes she can control the narrative. I pick up the document. The paper feels heavy, expensive. I pretend to scan the first page, my eyes flicking over the dense legal text. I let the silence stretch. The only sound the faint hum of the servers recording this moment for posterity. I look up, my expression one of mild, professional confusion. This is very thorough, I say, my voice neutral. I just have one question for clarification. Is this Exhibit B to your severance proposal, or is this an updated version of the original draft? It is a nonsense question, a string of words that sound legal but mean nothing. There is no severance proposal. There is no Exhibit B. There is no original draft. It is a logic trap, designed to elicit a specific response. Dahlia, desperate to maintain the illusion of a legitimate negotiation, falls right into it. She thinks I am engaging with her on the terms of the deal. She gives a small, condescending smile. It's the updated version, she says with a slight nod. More generous. And there it is, the nod, the confirmation, acknowledging that she has drafted and presented a new, binding legal document to me, here, today. I lower the pages to the table. I look directly at Anne Shaw. Ms. Shaw, I say, my voice now sharp, formal. Could you please ask General Counsel to confirm the date on which the board ratified the new whistleblower and shareholder anti-coercion policy? Kaplan, the General Counsel, who is sitting pale-faced in a corner, flinches as if struck. He knows exactly where this is going. It was ratified by the independent directors 2 days ago. He stammers. And could you please summarize Section 3 of that policy for the record? I ask, my eyes never leaving Dahlia's face. Kaplan clears his throat, reading from his tablet. Section 3 prohibits any officer, director, or shareholder of Westmere Analytics from attempting to coerce, intimidate, or otherwise improperly influence any employee or shareholder for the purpose of obstructing a shareholder vote or interfering with a formal board investigation. Any such attempt, particularly through the presentation of an undisclosed legal agreement, is considered a direct violation of the policy and an act of bad faith against the company. I tap the document in front of me. This generous, updated version contains clauses that demand I retract verified testimony and publicly mischaracterize evidence currently under review by this board. It is, by the very definition you just read, an attempt to obstruct this shareholder vote. I turn my head slightly and look directly into the lens of the main broadcast camera. And this entire exchange, from the moment Ms. Hale entered this room to the moment she confirmed the nature of this document, has been recorded as part of the official minutes of this meeting. The trap has closed. Marcus Cole, the former prosecutor, stands up. His voice booms through the silent room. For the record, he says, I would characterize this as a flagrant attempt to tamper with a witness in a pending corporate investigation and a direct effort to obstruct a shareholder proceeding. This is no longer just a governance issue. Dahlia finally understands. She looks from my face to Kaplan's, to the cold, unforgiving lens of the camera. The color drains from her face. She has not just lost, she has annihilated herself. Live, in front of the entire world. My father, who has been watching this entire exchange like a man watching a car crash in slow motion, looks at me, and for the first time in my life, I see that he is truly seeing me, not as his daughter, not as his employee, not as an extension of his own ambition. He is seeing a stranger, a creature of cold, hard, strategic logic that he created but does not understand. The bloodhound has come home, and it has turned on its master. I look back at him. My expression is empty of pity, of anger, of love. It is the look of a final transaction being closed. It is the last time I will ever need to see anything in his eyes. Anne Shaw brings the gavel down. The sound is like a gunshot. We will now proceed with the vote. The vote is a formality. The conclusion preordained. Dr. Thorne, Sarah Jenkins, and Marcus Cole are elected to the board with a 72% majority. My father, following the grim logic of the spreadsheet I sent him, votes his shares in favor of the new slate. It is his final act as CEO, a surrender. Shaw brings the gavel down again. The motion passes. The new board is constituted. Second, the board formally recognizes that the conditions of Section 12.4 of the merger agreement were triggered by the actions of former COO Dahlia Hale. She is hereby suspended from all duties and formally placed under external investigation. There is a murmur in the room. The new reality settles. From the back of the room, the lead counsel for Helix Quant, who has been observing, stands up. Given the board's decisive action and commitment to reform, he announces, Helix Quant is prepared to reopen negotiations, contingent on the new board's full cooperation. It is the final piece. The company is saved. The dynasty is dead. I speak for the last time. I have one final motion for the new board, I say. I move for the immediate formation of a permanent, independent ethics committee, to be led by a third-party firm, not by our general counsel. This committee must be granted full, unrestricted, and subpoena-level access to all corporate expenditures, including, and especially, the last 5 years of public relations and special project spending. Sarah Jenkins, the forensic accountant, smiles for the first time. I second that motion, she says. The doors to the conference room slide shut with a soft, final hiss, the sound of a vault being sealed. It is the end of the whispers. It is the end of the secrets. It is the end of, don't tell anyone. History does not just rhyme. It repeats, a vicious feedback loop for those who refuse to learn. After the meeting, I don't go back to my office. I don't go to the bar with the new board members for a celebratory drink. I take the elevator down to the lobby, walk out the front door of the Westmere Tower, and get into a waiting car. I tell the driver a single address, the Copper Finch Hotel. I know she will be there. A creature of habit, a narcissist drawn to the scene of her original crime, believing she can somehow rewrite the ending through sheer force of will. The service alley is just as I remember it, a concrete canyon smelling of damp earth and exhaust. But the lighting is different tonight. I had the hotel replace the dim yellow sodium lamps with harsh, white LEDs as part of the new blind spot initiative. The alley is now bathed in a flat, clinical glare that leaves no room for shadows. It looks like a stage. She is waiting for me, standing in the exact spot where she slapped me. She is a silhouette against the far wall. As I approach, my footsteps echoing in the enclosed space, her features resolve in the stark light. She looks hollowed out, the mask of the powerful COO stripped away, leaving only the raw, ugly machinery of her rage. She lets me walk until I am 10 feet away. You, she spits, the word a piece of poison. You did this. You destroyed everything. This family. This company. All of it. You burned it all to the ground just to get back at me. I don't answer. Instead, I reach into my coat pocket and pull out my phone. I tap the screen once. My own voice, recorded from the shareholder meeting an hour ago, plays into the silence, crisp and clear. By the very definition you just read, an attempt to obstruct this shareholder vote. Then her voice, a tinny ghost from the garage, captured by my watch. You ever steer another meeting off course? And finally her voice from moments ago, recorded as I approached. You destroyed everything. The sound cuts out. A small red light on the phone blinks. A single, digital heartbeat in the silent alley. I have her trapped in a loop of her own words, her own actions. Her face contorts, a mask of disbelief crumbling into pure fury. You are always recording, always watching, you pathetic little spy. A strategist plans for all contingencies, I say, my voice flat. And you, Dahlia, have always been my most predictable variable. I reach into my other pocket and pull out a small, laminated card. It's a temporary restraining order, issued by a city judge an hour after the E17.MP4 video was logged as evidence with the board. It was signed and activated the moment the shareholder vote concluded. It prohibits her from coming within 100 feet of me or any Westmere Analytics property. I hold it out. You are in violation of a court order, I state, not as a threat, but as a simple, inarguable fact. You are trespassing. That is what breaks her, the law, the rules, the system she thought she owned now being used as a cage to trap her. All the rage, all the humiliation, all the loss of control, coalesces into a single, guttural scream. She lunges. It's a clumsy, desperate attack, not the sharp, calculated slaps from before. This is the lunge of a cornered animal. She doesn't even get close. Two figures emerge instantly from the shadows of the loading dock. Hotel security. They are not 17 seconds late this time. They were waiting. They intercept her in two fluid, practiced motions, each guard taking an arm, stopping her momentum dead. The maneuver is so efficient, so clean. She is neutralized before she can even make a sound. "Ma'am, you need to stop," one of them says, his voice firm, authoritative. I see the small black box of a body camera on his chest, its red recording light glowing steadily. His partner's is on too. Their lapel microphones are capturing her ragged breathing, the sound of her struggling against their grip. Everything is being documented. Everything is evidence. I step closer, into her personal space, until I'm just a few feet away. She is panting, her eyes wild, locked on me with a hatred that is absolute. I lean in and speak in a very low voice, a whisper that is intimate and final, just loud enough for the body cam microphones to catch. "Nobody beat you, Dahlia," I say. "You beat yourself." As I step back, another sound enters the alley. It starts as a distant, mournful cry and grows quickly to a piercing wail. Blue and red lights flash against the concrete walls. A frantic, strobing disco of consequence. A Braxton Vale Police Department cruiser pulls into the mouth of the alley, blocking the only exit. The restraining order I filed had an automatic dispatch trigger. A violation reported from my phone's GPS, confirmed by the hotel's security chief, automatically summons law enforcement. The system is working perfectly. The police officers get out, their movements calm, professional. They know what this is. They have the report. I look around. I'm half expecting to see him, to see my father, making one last, desperate appeal to family, but he isn't here. The space where he should be is empty. He has already made his choice. He signed the papers. He accepted the vote. He is a ghost, already fading from the empire he built. The security guards hand a struggling, screaming Dahlia over to the police. They cuff her. They read her rights. The words are a familiar litany from 1,000 movies. But hearing them here, directed at her, feels like the closing of a great, heavy book. They put her in the back of the cruiser. The sirens start up again, and the car pulls away, its lights painting streaks across the damp alley walls. The wail fades into the city's drone, leaving behind a profound, ringing silence. Everything is suddenly, completely still. I am alone in the harsh, white light. I tilt my head back and look up. Above the loading dock, bolted to the brick, is a simple, illuminated sign. 4 capital letters in a red box. Exit. The way out. It has always been there, but I had never seen it so clearly. The path isn't through a door, it's through a decision. It's through the meticulous, patient dismantling of fear. I look at my watch. It isn't 8:41 p.m., but in my mind, it will be forever. That single, violent minute in this alley was not the moment Dahlia broke my skin. It was the moment I broke free from the prison of her, of him, of the Hale name. It was the moment I stopped being silent and started being strategic. It was the moment my fear finally, blessedly, died. The new board's first motion, passed unanimously, was the ratification of the Independent Ethics Committee. The second was to formally re-engage with Helix Quant. The negotiations were swift. Without Dahlia's toxicity and Victor's ego, and with a new governance structure built on the foundation of transparency I had designed, the deal was rebuilt. It was smaller, cleaner, and based on verifiable data, not on charismatic lies. It was a merger built on truth. The day the new terms were signed, I submitted my resignation. I stepped down from the executive family, a term I used in my official letter. I had no desire to be the new queen, to sit in the throne my father had vacated. My work was not to rule the empire, but to tear down its rotten foundations and design a new, stronger architecture. I accepted a temporary 6-month contract role, architect of culture and risk. My only job was to oversee the implementation of the new systems, to ensure the cure took hold. Then, I would be gone. That evening, I received a single text message. It was from Victor. 5 words. "You were right. I was wrong." It was the closest he would ever come to an apology, a final, pathetic bid for a connection he himself had severed years ago. I read the message, and then I deleted it. I did not reply. A few days later, a work crew arrived at the Westmere Tower. They took down the giant, 10-foot-tall poster in the lobby, the one with Victor and Dahlia's airbrushed faces, the one that proclaimed, "Integrity builds empires." I had the replacement already designed. The new sign was simple, stark, and printed in the same clean, powerful font. It read, "Truth builds people." It was no longer a boast. It was a mandate. My last official act as an employee of Westmere Analytics was a quiet one. I took the small, silver USB drive, the one labeled E17.MP4, to the company's new off-site legal archives, managed by the independent firm that now ran our ethics committee. I placed it into a secure evidence locker. It was not a weapon held in reserve. It was not a piece of blackmail to be used later. It was now simply what it should have been all along: a record, a standard, a clear, unambiguous line that could never again be crossed without consequence. I left the building and walked, not to my car, but back to the Copper Finch Hotel. I walked down the service alley one last time. It was empty. The harsh white lights hummed, illuminating a clean, clear path. No one was standing in my way. No ghosts, no memories. The air was just air. The concrete was just concrete. It was no longer a crime scene. It was just a place. I took a small digital recorder from my pocket, the same one I used to record my notes for strategic plans. I held it up, its small red light blinking. "We no longer live by secrets," I said, my voice clear in the quiet alley. I turned and walked away. Behind me, a motion sensor timed out, and half of the brilliant white lights in the alley clicked off, returning the space to a soft, anonymous gray. The frame closes on the alley's emergency exit door, propped just slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness promising a way out. No applause, no explanation. The end. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. So please drop a comment below, and let's connect and share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and showing your support by hitting that hype button to help this story reach more people.